Nevertheless, I want people to differentiate between what a language is and what script is. Okay, language is spoken. Script is the written version. And it's totally logical, practical, and validated. It's not that it is something that came to somebody during meditation and they just blabbered it out. It has a very strong base. When they this, let us be very practical. Let us not be emotionally attached and say Sanskrit is a wonderful language and everybody should know it.
Hello everyone, welcome to Curious Vaidya. This is our first episode of our very new podcast series on Ayurveda. I'm your host, Dr. Shruti, and I have a very special guest with me, as you can see on the screen. She's Dr. Savita Shenoy. She is a professor from my mother institute, Sri Sri College of Ayurvedic Science and Research in Bangalore. So she's not just my first teacher, but also the reason probably why I didn't run away from Ayurveda. So welcome, ma'am. This is just a brief introduction to ma'am, but you'll know much more about her and why she is the guest of our first episode just by listening to her. So she is a very prolific teacher, has a stellar experience of more than 15 years, and has trained numerous undergraduate and postgraduate students in Ayurveda, and also in a way, shaped young minds in Ayurveda, I would say, because she was the one who encouraged us to speak our minds and ask any question unabashed. So welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Shruti.
So let's get directly into the conversation, ma'am. The topic for today is something that's very close to both of us, because ma'am has not only done her post-graduation in Ayurveda, but also in the language Sanskrit. She's done her MA in Sanskrit, and a small plus over there is that she was 7th rank in the Karnataka state as well in the exams. So the language Sanskrit is something that's very close to the both of us. So the topic for today is the language of Ayurveda. And so I'll directly jump into my questions and try to get as much as your opinions as possible, ma'am. So the first question is that, for the benefit of our listeners, can you please tell them what is the language of Ayurveda and how is it important and significant in the scientific aspect of Ayurveda?
Language of Ayurveda, it's well known, it's Sanskrit, yes, or we call Samskrita. Okay. Nevertheless, I want people to differentiate between what a language is and what script is. Okay, language is spoken. Script is the written version. Yes. Now, when I say Samskrita was the language of Ayurveda, it was written in Devanagari, it was written in Telugu, it was written in Tamil. The script could have varied, but the language, basically, source language was Samskrita for writing Ayurveda. And its importance is immense. Just like you cannot read English without ABCD, you cannot understand or go through the documents of Ayurveda without knowing Sanskrit. So that's the importance, and how in scientific community it will be required. That's, people may call Ayurveda as a philosophy or something mysterious, but no, we know it is quite a scientific subject. Okay, it's not just a medical science; it's a science that teaches us about life, and it's totally logical, practical, and validated. It's not that it is something that came to somebody during meditation and they just blabbered it out. It has a very strong base when they have spoken. So certainly Ayurveda is a science. Now, when we convey this to a community, it's essential they should understand Ayurveda as a science first.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when I have to explain Ayurveda, I have to explain it in its language, that is Sanskrita. Yes. Unfortunately, not all know this language very well today.
Yes.
So that certainly is a hindrance. So the importance of learning Sanskrit becomes all the more essential. So I think that's where the importance of the language Samskrita for Ayurveda generally and for the scientific communities.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you're right that language is like the gateway to the science. So unless
Certainly.
we unlock this, I don't think we'll be able to justify the science either.
True.
So, as you said that Sanskrit is something that is not known to many people. So I just did a small survey amongst our PG graduates of Ayurveda. I got responses from around 70-80 people, and the results were shocking, ma'am. Because I asked only few simple questions about Sanskrit and Ayurveda. First question being if they thought that learning Sanskrit was important to understand Ayurveda. And that was a very expected answer, wherein almost 92% of people agreed and said, yes, it is important. But the second question was if they understood Sanskrit completely without any translation. And that is where it was shocking because almost 50% of them did not understand. So there could be a variation in the degree of their understanding of Sanskrit. But then when the answer came back that almost 50% of them don't understand Sanskrit without translation, that was a little shocking for me. Because again, we're
Could
talking
I
about.
interrupt you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Shruti, the thing is, Sanskrit is such a vast language. Even those 50% who said they could understand Sanskrit, you should understand it is only the minimal, fair, basic Sanskrit will be understood.
Yes, ma'am.
It's an elaborate language and it has such a strong grammar.
Yes,
And that's one reason why comprehension of Sanskrit is not very easy.
correct, ma'am.
Once understood, it is easy, but the language is not as easy as English or any other local languages are. Sanskrit has a very strong grammatical base, and each word conveys so much more
Yes,
that
ma'am.
comprehension from a person to other may differ, and we don't know which is right. So those who said they didn't know, that's an easier answer to accept. Those who said they know, we don't know how much.
Correct,
For
ma'am.
anybody to know Sanskrit, it's very difficult.
Yes, so that is where my second question comes in. That is, what are the barriers to learning of Sanskrit in not just with the perspective of Ayurveda, but also in the primary or secondary education level, wherein what do you think are the barriers? What can be done about it is a second question. But then, what are the entry level barriers to learning of Sanskrit in present day?
You know the present day education system, Shruti.
Yes.
Fortunately, unfortunately, there have been invasions on India, and then there have been their traits that have been inculcated into the culture of India.
Correct.
Unfortunately, we have the British system of education that's going on even today.
Yes.
So basically, our primary education focuses on English. English is the language, and of course, there are state schools which will focus on the language of the state.
Yes, ma'am.
But Sanskrit has taken a backseat.
Yes.
This language actually is almost 3,500 years plus documentation has started. In Ayurveda, Sanskrit language documentation has started much more before time. But the thing is, earlier this was a spoken language even in India. Many of the states, there were people who knew to speak and converse fluently in Sanskrit. Unfortunately, after the invasions, the main thing they uprooted was the schools and this language because they knew that was our strength. And to hold on or to capture India, it was essential to weaken us. And that is where they disturbed that basic system of education that we had. Our strength was our language, Sanskrit, that was seen to it that it was eradicated somehow from the system of education. So now to bring it back, it is not that easy because there is this rat race going on where everybody needs to know English, everybody needs to know the language of the state, everybody needs to know Hindi. This much may be a essentiality, but needs to know Sanskrit has not yet come.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's the major barrier. Yes, now we are getting to know that it is essential. It should be introduced at the primary level. It's not something we learn in first year BMS. BMS is the degree of Ayurveda that we learn under graduation. In the first year, you learn the language alongside you start the books. It is
Yes.
not easy. It should begin from the primary level at the school level. And this is something that, government has to take it up. Of course, from the Ayurvedic fraternity, there has to be this pressure also. And this will only happen when, as Ayurvedists, we all believe that Sanskrit is essential.
Yes.
First, we should believe. Then we can make the community believe, and there hence the government will certainly take it up. So that's the major barrier. Major barrier, 90% of Ayurvedic people know Ayurveda very well, know how we can make it work, that much Sanskrit, very basic Sanskrit, functional Sanskrit is known. But nobody knows Sanskrit so authentically that they are not able to tell that we need Sanskrit. That pressure from the Ayurvedic community has not yet begun. If that starts, I'm sure the government will also take it up very seriously. Yes. It should start at the primary level, according to me.
Just on a side note, ma'am, because you learned the language of Sanskrit apart from the concept of Ayurveda, do you think it is important for people who are not in the field of Ayurveda as well to learn Sanskrit or to know about Sanskrit, like as a language, or do you think it has some importance in people's life apart from just being a language?
This, I'll have a divided opinion. Those who are learning Ayurveda certainly will require a proper knowledge of Sanskrit. Apart from that, those who are working close to the culture of India, that is, maybe they are working on Vedas or Upanishads, those who are working on documents which require Sanskrit essentially will require a proper knowledge. Okay. But for that, we know for the general working of the community or for general public, it's not an essentiality. This, let us be very practical. Let us not be emotionally attached and say Sanskrit is a wonderful language and everybody should know it. But yes, if you want to learn Ayurveda, Sanskrit is a must, and there is no two way about it.
Okay. Makes sense, ma'am. Because it is a bit of a stretch for everybody to understand and for us also to expect that that much effort will be made in this direction. But yes, for an Ayurveda fraternity person and also who are related to Vedas and Upanishads, as you said, Sanskrit is very important. So again, now this leads me to the third question, that is, what can we do to change this? Especially, let's stick only to Ayurveda and figure out what can be done in order to improve the status of Sanskrit understanding in Ayurveda.
Shruti, there are experts in Ayurveda. There are experts in Sanskrit. Unfortunately, there are not many Ayurvedists who are also expert in Sanskrit. And there are not many Sanskrit experts who know Ayurveda well. Correct. So this is a major barrier. I might know the concepts well of Ayurveda, but maybe I am misinterpreting a few things because of my lack or ignorance in the knowledge of Sanskrit. Yes, ma'am. Similarly, a Sanskrit teacher may be wonderful, may understand the shlokas very well, the verses very well, but the person may not know Ayurveda enough to know the contextual meaning, yes, or how it is to be applied. So the major barrier that we need to resolve here is we should encourage people who have done Ayurveda to learn the language as well and have an expertise in that. Yes. So a person who has an expertise in both Ayurveda and Sanskrit is one answer or a solution to this question. Other thing is Ayurvedic texts or verses are not just in prose format. Many of them are in poetic format. That's the major reason why there are misinterpretations and comprehension goes wrong. When it is in the prose format, we just read and we can just literally translate. It's easy. But when it is in the poetic format, the words are jumbled. Yes. And there is, of course, a rule to jumble the words also. It is done meticulously done according to grammar. But when we reshuffle to bring that back to a prose format, we should have a very strong knowledge of grammar. We cannot just reshuffle because a negative word, say na word, placed in one place could give some other meaning, placed some other place in the sentence may give some other meaning. Yes. So this sort of understanding where we resolve each verse, comprehend it properly, is only possible if our grammatical basis of Sanskrit is strong and we have a working knowledge or expertise in Ayurveda. Both should be made mandatory. for practitioners as well as those who are in quest of learning Ayurveda. Both is essentiality.
Ma'am, in that case, then how do we expect a first year student to be able to understand Sanskrit, ma'am? Because then, as you said, knowledge of Ayurveda is also necessary to understand, because our understanding of Sanskrit is very much limited to the context of Ayurveda. Even a person, like for example, I don't consider myself to be very fluent in Sanskrit. But if you give me an Ayurvedic shloka, because of the context of Ayurveda that I know, I'll be able to understand it at least to a certain extent, but may not be possible with any other Sanskrit poem. So,
Yes.
how can we expect a first year student to understand Sanskrit without enough knowledge of Ayurveda, ma'am?
This is very true for most of us, Shruti.
Yes.
It's not like just because I have a degree in Sanskrit, I read any verse in Sanskrit, I'll be able to, dismantle it and know the exact meaning. Okay, context when it is known, it is easier to comprehend any verse for that matter. Okay, so how we can expect the first year student? Yes, that is the main drawback. Students within first 6 months have such a aversion for Ayurveda because they do not understand Sanskrit. They want to run away from the course. This is
Correct.
happening.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it is at this place that we teachers literally need to make them emotionally fit, make them feel at home, and say this is going to resolve as days go by. Okay, but yes, it is very unfair that we teach them Sanskrit in first year and alongside want them to understand the text in Sanskrit. It is unfair on a first year BME student. So I think we can do something like before we start the course, there should be 2 months of exclusive Sanskrit training
Yes,
where
ma'am.
no other subject is taught. 2 months of exclusive Sanskrit training, at least working Sanskrit training should be done. And what we call as Sambhasha Shibiras
Yes,
should be
ma'am.
done to bridge them from their PCMB status of mind to Ayurveda state of mind. So
Correct.
that modulation or transformation is essential. They
Yes.
cannot just have physics, chemistry, biology in their heads and learn Ayurveda. Yes, those are also a part. Those will help. Those are basic sciences. Those are essential.
Yes, ma'am.
But I think there is a 2 month bridging required between 12th and Ayurveda course as such. So we needn't start all the subjects immediately. A 2 months bridging course in the subject Ayurveda, where you in the subject Sanskrit, where you learn to even converse in Sanskrit, should be one solution to this question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, because when it comes to any other language that you've learned as a kid, Sanskrit, first thing you're learning as a 17, 18-year-old person, minimum.
Yes.
Some might learn later also. So the comprehension, as you said, is so difficult because the grammar is just so abstract.
Yes.
When we study Rama, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just memorizing it, and it becomes so difficult to then connect the dots because I'm able to memorize all the grammar that I'm learning in Sanskrit, and I'm able to understand a concept that's being told to me in Ayurveda, but I'm not able to connect the two. How do I bring the knowledge of this subject into this is something that's missing, I feel. Because even now I struggle with that. Even after studying Ayurveda for 9 years, I'm I'm still struggling with actually using the knowledge that I gained in my first year of Sanskrit and applying it today. So that gets me to the next question, that is about translation or transliteration, as we say. Do you think translation is an option? Do you think that can be a solution for people uh, who are not able to understand Sanskrit?
It is one of the options, yes. But then how authenticated is the translation remains a question. Better than not knowing anything is knowing something. That's clear. So if you're not able to comprehend anything when you read it in Sanskrit, if translation could add on to your knowledge bank, certainly you can go through. But unfortunately, we do not have authentication. We do not have a governing council or any superior body here in India which will say the translation is done rightly. So each person will release a book with a translation, We don't know what they are putting into the community, right? So, and once you are printing something, it's a media, it's going to spread in the public. So there are all chances you could spread wrong knowledge,
Correct.
which is a possibility, which could be detrimental to Ayurveda. And this is probably one of the reasons why we say Ayurveda has a lot of contradictions. No, there is no contradiction. Problem is there is a lot of contradiction in the comprehension by various people.
Yes.
Ayurveda is spark clear. It's absolute. It's perfect. Problem is in the understanding by all of us. And each individual is understanding it in a different way. Fortunately, unfortunately. It's good to have opinions, but there is no, merger wherein we have a pinpoint conclusion to things because of our failing to understand Sanskrit very well. So as you said, I would not say abstract, but yes, it is so much there, so much to learn grammar. I mean, there are so many n number of sutras. Each thing can be interpreted in n number of ways. So for you to know the translations, for you to understand which is apt for the given situation and context, it's essential. So not all translations are reliable.
Yes, ma'am.
Translation is partially a solution, but I do not advocate translations as the option for learning Ayurveda. I would recommend learn Ayurveda in its own language, Sanskrit only. You are not a practitioner or you're not into the academics, you just want to know about Ayurveda, you're a commoner, then translation could be a good source.
Okay.
Not otherwise.
Okay. Just a small addition to that, ma'am. Do you think that translation in English is better or translation into regional languages is better? Do you think there is a comparison between the two, or all translations are only to a certain level?
Unbiased opinion, regional language translations are much better. English as such, the language doesn't have proper words to explain the words given in Ayurveda, in Sanskrit language. Okay, the regional language in India, most of them are derived from Sanskrit, and hence they'll have a similar word that can explain it more better. English may fail there. I'm not belittling English. English has its own advantages. It's the language that world understands. It's not that I'm saying there shouldn't be translations in English, but English somehow falls short of explaining Sanskrit very well. It's the regional language that will do more justice to it. And also, I think people from each state, if they learn it in their own language, the translations will be understood better also. English, however we know, how much ever we know, it's an alien language to India, that will remain so.
Yes, ma'am.
Let us be clear about that. When we learn something in our mother tongue or in our regional language, it's like innate to us. It's easily imbibed.
Correct.
English is an alienated language. We might become experts in it, I don't say no, but then it's not capable of translating Samskrita properly.
Yes.
That's for sure.
So we're almost towards the end of this discussion, ma'am, because as you suggested, one of the solutions to this problem of Sanskrit was having a crash course of Sanskrit before you actually start with Ayurveda. There is another thing that me and my friends have discussed that could be a solution. And this is what I had also asked in my survey. And almost 70% of the people agreed that this could be a good idea, was that continuing the learning of Sanskrit as a part of the curriculum all throughout BMS and not limiting it to just first year. Because as we go through the BMS curriculum, with every passing year, our knowledge of Ayurveda increases, our confidence in Ayurveda increases, because initially we don't, we are new to everything and we might not be very confident in what we're learning as well. But
Yes.
as we go by, because that confidence increases, maybe learning Ayurveda all throughout the 4 years of BMS helps. So what do you think, ma'am? Is that a solution? Can we do something on that?
Certainly, it looks like a good idea. Also, there are some Devi Stutis, things like that, which we hardly know the meaning. We go on chanting daily and it gets by hearted, and somehow we feel we understand a few things after that. Maybe once we start liking something, learning it becomes easier, as you said. As days go by, we know the reason why we are learning Sanskrit. First year, it's a burden, additional burden to us.
Yes, ma'am.
So as we go by, we know, I wish I could understand this language better. This wish comes. It's very unfortunate it's not continued throughout. To be very truthful, Shruti, neither in my undergraduation, post-graduation was a little better. But now that I have started teaching, it is during teaching that I have learned a lot. When we try and explain things to others, we see where the lacuna is. Then we work on it.
Correct.
So this quest to learn is more when we teach.
Yes.
Because we cannot be wrong when we teach. We have to spread the right thing across.
Yes.
Right? So not only during BAMS, I feel this journey is a continuous journey for Ayurvedists. It has to be learning of Sanskrit. But it would be a great idea to have the language Sanskrit throughout. But the problem here, I'll tell you, Shruti, from the student point of view. Already there is a question whether Sanskrit should have examination. It is just to learn.
Yes, ma'am.
Why should we have an examination and pass marks? So the moment we say there is no examination, you know how we students are, right?
Yes.
There is no examination, we don't learn it.
Yes.
Well, so that holds good for all years. It will be an additional burden if we say there is an examination. Throughout, there will be an additional subject. And if we say there is no examination, you have to just learn it, there will be hardly a percent of student learning it.
Yes.
So that's being practical.
Yes.
Your solution is absolute. It's perfect. You will understand it now that you are out from BAMS and post-graduation.
Yes.
But those there will say, why do we need to learn it? Or why do we need to write the exam in it? So there are challenges. It's not easy to inculcate in the curriculum. Certainly a solution, but when we see the practicality, I think retaining it to first year was the best thing to do. Thereafter, it is up to the person to develop.
Yes, ma'am.
And of course, Sanskrit teacher is available all around the clock in the college, and it is a subject that's there in the Ayurveda course. So I think those interested will certainly get back to the teacher and learn more throughout the course, irrespective of it being a subject or not.
Yes.
So I basically feel it's more about interest and your want to learn the language rather than having it in the curriculum.
Yeah, that is there, ma'am. Yes. I hope with this conversation, we're able to reach some first year students who agree that Sanskrit is important. Because yes, I agree that while I was studying it, I detested it. I was also the same category where I was like, why am I learning this? Why do I have to give an exam on this? And it's much later where I understood the importance of it. So I hope we're able to reach more and more new students of Ayurveda, people who are interested in Ayurveda, and make them understand that this is just a small barrier, but if you overcome this, you have a vast science waiting for you, which will open avenues for you that you can't even think of. And I hope with this new trend of Ayurveda that's coming in the country also, post-COVID, I think there is a new wave wherein people are understanding the importance of Ayurveda, are understanding the importance of healthcare. So this is the right time to have these conversations and get as many people as possible on board. So any last remarks, ma'am? So we'll wrap up the session then.
It's just that I need to thank you personally and from the Ayurvedic community, because you've started off with something for the public interest. I mean, this will really educate people. Academics apart, this is required for the community to know things. And thank you for making me a part of this. Thank you so much for having me, Shruti. And I hope you continue the good work.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a pleasure speaking to you. I hope we have many more conversations in future.
Certainly.